What's going on, Dolphins fans? It is your boy Dillon, and I got a couple quick things I want to talk about, or a couple things I want to talk about. I'm gonna go through an article from who is it? Alain Poupart, another one of his, Dolphins notebook with some updates on some things, including OTA observations, a Malik Hooker update, tight end tales, and more. And then also I want to just poke a couple things from another article that is basically talking about how Xavien Howard is the best cornerback in the league, which, I mean, he is, obviously. So anyway, let's get into it. Let's start with this Dolphins notebook. OTA observations, Hooker update, tight end tales, and more. The second Miami Dolphins OTA session open to media was a lot more eventful than the first, though there still are only so many things to glean from it. Linebacker Jerome Baker and veteran newcomer DJ Fluker both were in attendance after being absent for the first open OTA a week ago. So a couple more players have shown up. 8 players were not spotted during the second open OTA, including cornerback Xavien Howard, new wide receiver Will Fuller. The others were running backs Myles Gaskin and Salvon Ahmed, defensive linemen Zach Sealer and Emmanuel Ogbah, and linebackers Bernardrick McKinney and Brandon Scarlett. He goes on to say that it's voluntary workouts, and there's a quote from Brian Flores that basically says he doesn't give a shit, and so I'm not going to read it, because who cares? It's voluntary. Who fucking cares? Now for some observations. Rookie first round pick, and now we're going to start getting into some more important stuff though. Rookie first round pick Jalen Waddle struggled early fielding punts as he dropped 2 in the first punting drill, but he handled every punt in the second drill. The reason why that's important is because especially considering the fact that he is obviously still rehabbing his ankle. Look, man, I don't know how it's to say it other than I do not want them using him on special teams. But every indication that we've had to this point, and, now the media is reporting from, live drills that he is fielding punts. So they are at least using him in that role in practice. Obviously, we have to wait until, preseason games in the middle of August, and then moving into September for the regular season before we see for sure if, they end up using him on special teams in, real live action. But I just think that will be an absolute disaster, especially because, several reporters and beat writers and people that cover the Dolphins or whatever, that get to go to these things have noted and mentioned that, he's still not at full speed, and he's clearly, still rehabbing that ankle. So I just think it's a disaster. I mean, it's, especially with the other players on the team that they have, they just shouldn't use him there, period. But I just think it's going to be a disaster. And if they do use him in a live game, as much as I don't want it to happen, there is a very high probability of him getting hurt again and at least missing some time because of that. And so it's a concern to me. The Dolphins did some offense versus defense work, unlike the first open OTA, though it wasn't full speed. Okay, so by the way, as I go through these, and the same thing goes for training camp, so as we go through the off-season program, once you get to preseason games, every little bit, the closer you get to the regular season, gets more and more important because there's more and more information that you can take from it. The earlier on in the process you are, the less important it is. And, but overall at the end of the day, the off-season program still is only a relatively small piece to the overall puzzle, and it's not necessarily indicative of how your team is actually going to perform in the regular season, as we have seen a million times over with damn near every team in existence, right? So, honestly, especially when it comes to the hype shit, and look, this is not me being a hater or anything, like, I just don't care about the hype that comes from camp because, again, it doesn't really mean anything. right? And what I want to see is the next thing really, I mean, look, going through this, it's going to be, you know, more context, more data, more information, like the little bit I just talked about before about Jalen Waddle. They're obviously using him in practice, and so that's useful information because that tells me they're at least practicing him at that position, which is concerning to me. And it also would lead you to believe that they will likely do that at least in the preseason. But how many times even in the preseason have we seen guys go down, right? So look, man, I just don't like it. But anyway, you know, so there's some stuff, but most of all, it's just contextual information that, you know, helps to bring the bigger picture into focus. It's not the entire picture itself, right? It's just a piece of the picture. Anyway, wide receiver Preston Williams, who missed the second half of the 2020 season with a foot injury, was at practice but did not participate in any drills. Obviously, he's probably still rehabbing from his injury. We know that Mike Gesicki has been rehabbing from his shoulder injury. Linebacker Vince Beagle took part in drills. Remember that he missed the entire 2020 season after sustaining an Achilles injury in training camp. So, see how he does. What's next? The Dolphins wrapped up their second of 4 weeks of OTAs with the practice Friday. They have one more week of OTAs before the mandatory mini camp scheduled for June 15th to 17th. The OTAs next week remain voluntary. Hooker update. Safety Malik Hooker, who visited the Dolphins a few weeks back but left without a contract, visited the Pittsburgh Steelers on Friday. The notion of signing Hooker, a former first-round pick with the Colts, became a whole less likely when the Dolphins signed veteran Jason McCourty a few days later. McCourty has played mostly cornerback in his NFL career, but has experience at safety as well, and very well might end up there for the Dolphins given their greater need at the position. So, look, in that context, I mean, these things require a lot of nuance, right? So, in the specific context of Jason McCourty, there's a couple things that come to mind. One, it's another Patriots player that was brought over that just proves the point that Brian Flores is trying to replicate what the Patriots did. Anybody that says otherwise is intentionally not seeing what's happening. His defense is a replica of Bill Belichick's defense. The culture he's trying to set is a replica of the Patriots way. A lot of their philosophies, like the players and coaches they bring over, there's literally no argument that he's not trying to replicate the Bill Belichick and Patriots way and systems. Like, to say otherwise is just absurd and live in a false reality. So that's one thing. Another thing is the fact that he's moving him to safety. I mean, first of all, he's not brilliant for doing that. He's not like he's the first coach to ever take an aging cornerback and move him to safety to try and squeeze out the last little bit that you can. Having said that, I would actually rather have Bobby McCain than Jason McCourty. And I would actually rather have Malik Hooker than Jason McCourty because I do think he has a lot more potential. However, when you then go to the Malik Hooker thing, conversation, on that note, as again, things are very nuanced, in the big picture, in the grand scheme of things, I don't want Malik Hooker to be signed because I think that, first of all, he would cost more than Jason McCourty, so that he'd have a higher cap hit for sure. But also because, look, this organization has tried and missed with several former first-round picks from other teams. Every single one that they brought in has been a failure. Josh Rosen, Robert Nkemdiche, Taco Charlton, Isaiah Wilson, every single one of them. They're bad at evaluation, they're bad at development. So there's that. So overall, I wouldn't want to bring him in. I would just rather have Bobby McCain, but, you know, they got rid of him. Anyway, so, but at the end of the day, though, it's probably, honestly, you know, people are still swooning over Melvin Ingram and trying to figure out what the Dolphins' plan is and how they're, like, honestly, bro, I don't think they're going to bring in either of those guys. And I think a lot of it has to do with cap reasons because the Dolphins don't have, like, any money. It's, you know, they don't. I mean, a lot of people think they're fucking loaded right now, which is ridiculous. They might, comparative to the rest of the league, they might be in the top half, or, you know, the top whatever, 10, top 5, whatever it is. But it doesn't necessarily mean that you have a lot of money. You can be in the top 5 and still not have a lot of money. The reason why is because a lot of other teams are in the negatives. Some teams are deep in the fucking negatives. So anyway, it's about the context and, you know, what specifically you're talking about. Anyway, tight ends. Durham Smythe and Mike Gesicki joined the Dolphins at the same time, both arriving as 2018 draft picks, and it's clear they've developed a bond since that time. But maybe that bond is being tested this spring, with Smythe staying with Gesicki during the offseason program. Situation, I had an apartment down here. Whatever. Honestly, I don't really care about that. After talking about his close... I honestly really don't care about that, so I'm going to skip that part and move on to the next. I mean, it's cute, it's great, and obviously we know, you know, they came in and, you know, they shared a apartment. I think that when they first got to the Dolphins, I think that they shared an apartment, so we know they're close, and that's cool, and obviously that's good for, you know, camaraderie and chemistry on the team and so on and so forth. But it's really nothing super interesting that I need to waste time on here. The other thing, though, is I want to mention is from this article that listed the top cornerbacks in the league from NFL.com. It's an Around the NFL writer, Nick Shuk. And there's a couple points that I want to make in correlation to this. And I'm just going to go through it quick. So real quick, let's see. And today, I'll start with the intro here. In today's pass-first NFL, clubs wisely place a premium on defenders who are highly effective in coverage. There is perhaps no greater value to a defense than a player who can effectively shut down an opposing pass catcher or a significant section of the field. While we don't quite have an island named after any of these defenders, the players listed below excelled at denying the opposition through the air in 2020. Now, some important notes about the parameters for this exercise. We set a minimum of 300 coverage snaps and 40 targets to achieve legitimate volume among qualifiers. Players also had to finish with a catch rate allowed that was below expectation, a negative targeted expected points added, a metric used to quantify how much an individual player impacted an opponent's scoring potential, a tight window percentage of at least 20%, 15% for linebackers, more on that later, and a maximum pass rating allowed of 80. These requirements pared down the candidates to only those with the most well-rounded production. Using a combination of those metrics, along with target rate, average separation, and ball hawk rate as supplementary metrics, but most importantly targeted EPA, we dove into the next-gen stats to identify the players who were the best in coverage in 2020. So I'm not going to go into the specifics of all these players, but I will give you the list. At number 10 came Joe Hayden. At number 9 was Kendall Fuller from Washington Football Team. New Orleans, Chauncey Gardner-Johnson at 8. Indianapolis Colts, Xavier Rhodes at number 7. Cincinnati Bengals, Jesse Bates at number 6. Darius Williams from the Rams at 5. Fred Warner from the 49ers at 4. Bryce Callahan from the Broncos at 3. Jair Alexander from the Packers at 2, and at number 1, our boy Xavien Howard. I am gonna get his jersey at some point because Howard is my boy. I do want to get it in the old school, the throwbacks, because I think his jersey in the throwback is sick. I do like that jersey, don't get me wrong, but I also like the new jersey, and For me, the New Jersey look is fine, so I'll just address this really quick. I'm fine with having it normal, as long as, like, if we didn't have the throwbacks at all, that would upset me. But the fact that we bring him in 2 or 3 times a year, I love that. And in fact, I think if Dolphins fans love it so much, they should actually like the fact that it's a special treat, right? We only get it a couple times. It makes it that much more special. So, anyway. Let's get into this, though. Passer rating allowed, 46.5. He's a beast. Catch rate allowed below expectation is minus 6.8%, which is the best in the league, I believe. Tight window percentage, 21.6%. Target rate, 18.2%. And average separation, 2.8 yards. targeted expected points added, negative 34.5, best in the NFL. It should come as no surprise that the league leader in interceptions, 10, landed atop this list. Howard was effective in all areas and might have received a boost from Miami's decision to move him off the line of scrimmage last season. After spending nearly 70% of his coverage snaps in press coverage in 2019, Howard pressed opposing receivers just 32.2% of the time in 2020, and it produced excellent results. I mean, he's also just a beast. Let's be frank, and he has been since Brian Flores got here. But okay, you can give him credit for that, right? You can't give Flores credit, or even Adam Gase credit for that matter, credit for his natural athletic ability and for him taking advantage of it. But you can then give Adam Gase credit for selecting him, and which is part of what I wanted to say in this, for having selected him and evaluating him as the superstar that he is, and also getting him in the second round, let's note. And then for the first few years of his career, his development, right? And then, at the end of the day, I mean, if we're keeping it real, Flores just kind of, he inherited him. But, you can say what you want, and you can give him credit for at least this one little thing, because apparently it did have an effect. Although I'm not really sure, if I'm keeping it real, I'm not really sure that, that was the big difference. But hey, maybe it was. I mean, he's an elite cornerback either way, and, I think his overall numbers and play on the field and tape speaks for that. Anyway, but Flores can get some credit there. Only Marcus Peters was more effective in press coverage last season. See, and this is part of the reason why, because he says that it seemed to have helped helped Howard to improve by taking him out of press coverage by actually quite a significant, almost 40% of the time. But then he also notes that there was only one cornerback in the entire league who was better at press coverage. So, I'm not really sure that that's really what it was that helped him to improve this year. I just think that he's a beast, and that's all it is, and that's how Howard is. Anyway, let's see. With Howard finishing second to the Ravens quarterback, minus 20.6, and targeted EPA on such throws at negative 16. Some teams opted to challenge Howard deep and learned that was also a bad decision. He recorded 4 interceptions on deep targets, the most in the NFL in 2020, and finished with a targeted EPA of negative 17.4 on such targets, the lowest rate in the league. And obviously he led the league in interceptions overall with 10. These numbers fall in line with a demonstrated history of success downfield too. Howard hasn't allowed a deep passing touchdown as the nearest defender since 2017, intercepting 7 passes on deep targets and allowing a grand total of just 4 receptions for 186 yards on 35 deep targets since the start of the 2018 season. He's a beast. He is a beast. But see, this goes to show you though that this has predated Flores, right? He's a monster, and, really the credit goes to Adam Gase. I mean, just point blank, bottom line, period. The evaluation goes to Adam Gase. The getting him in the second round goes to Adam Gase. And, the bulk of his development, especially in the earliest parts of his career, came from Adam Gase. And clearly his numbers date back to Adam Gase as well. So, just saying. Howard Island might not be a thing yet, but the information above suggests he was worthy of the nickname in 2020. Yeah, bro, you can leave him on an island all fucking day and he's a monster. He can do what he needs to do. Another interesting note, though, here that I want to put in is he listed some just missed, some honorable mentions. Cleveland Browns cornerback Denzel Ward, inside linebacker from the Bears Roquan Smith, cornerback from the Bengals Darius Phillips, outside linebacker from the Dolphins, Jerome Baker, which is interesting. And that's actually a player we're going to have to keep an eye on, because we're going to have to wait and see if the Dolphins re-sign him. And if they let him go, I think that would be a massive shame. But I find the reason why I find that even more interesting is because, one, that's another Gase player who Gase picked and brought into this organization. So another player that you can give tons of credit to Gase for. And also because I wanted to point out that Byron Jones is not on this list. Okay, he's not even in the honorable mentions. And when you actually look at his stats overall, he was not super great last year. People say that like he had a great year last year. Not really. If you look at, you know, his stats, just his base stats or even the next gen stats, clearly by him not even being on this list, I think, and you know, then when you add in how much he's getting paid and the fact that he gets paid more than Howard, I mean, there's no doubt. I mean, it's again, another thing that just literally cannot be argued. He's overpaid. I mean, he's way overpaid for what you get from him. He should not be paid more than Howard. And unfortunately, that's going to cause problems, though, for this Dolphins team in numerous ways. It's going to cause issues with Xavien Howard and his contract. Maybe they get something done, but it's going to push the price up because of, you know, what he's getting paid. And Howard is clearly twice the fucking cornerback that he is, if not more, right? And so there's that. It also could cause problems in being able to keep both of those guys, cap ramifications for the future. And then if you do have to get rid of one of them, well, then that hurts the defense because, you know, he might not be worth his contract, but he is still a pretty solid corner in the league, right? And so, you know, there is that too. So there's just some interesting things that came to mind when I was going through that article that I wanted to share. All right, anyway, that's what I got. Just those two things, the Alain Poupart notebook, you know, his little Dolphins notebook thing, updates with some OTA stuff and whatnot, and then also, you know, that article about Xavien Howard being the best corner in the league, which is obvious. All right, with that, I'm going to get out of here. I hope you guys appreciate my perspective. If you do, make sure you hit the subscribe button. Make sure you hit the like button. Make sure you hit the bell if you want to get the alerts. Share my channel and videos with your friends and family. Leave your questions, comments, and concerns down in the comment section. And, of course, as always, follow me on Twitter at Dillon Tartaro. And with that, I am out. I'll see you soon. Phins up.